the company went on a team-building trip to Colmar. I found out that my boyfriend was planning to propose to me while everyone was watching the sunset. But that evening, he actually knelt down on one knee in front of someone else with a ring in his hand. Vivian, I'm willing to be the father of the child. Marry me. Vivian was Oliver's first love, whom he had loved deeply for 10 years. I watched the two of them hugging closely in the afterglow of the setting sun. Then I turned around, booked a trip for 3 days later, and went home to go on a blind date. It was not until a year later, when I returned to the country, that we met again. Oliver grabbed me with his eyes bloodshot. Evelyn, you're finally back. Don't leave me again. Your trip will depart from Colmar in 3 days. Miss Evelyn, I wish you a pleasant journey. Goodbye. I had just confirmed the flight ticket information with the staff when the voice of my little assistant came from behind. Sister Evelyn. It's time for us to go back. At this moment, Oliver had already carefully helped Vivian leave. The news that he proposed to the ex-girlfriend of the prince of the capital city became a trending topic. Everyone said that he had been secretly in love with her for 10 years and finally won the beauty's heart. But they didn't know that I was the girlfriend who had been in a relationship with him for 6 years. When I found the customized wedding ring in Oliver's pocket in the afternoon, I was still filled with joy. He remembered that I wanted to be proposed to under the sunset glow, but now I was severely slapped in the face. It turned out that neither his love nor the ring belonged to me. Not long after the car left the town, Oliver called. His tone on the other end of the phone was commanding. I want to have chestnut and black bone chicken soup in half an hour. After saying that, he hung up the phone without giving me a chance to refuse. I was stunned for a moment. Then I realized that chestnut and black bone chicken soup was most suitable for pregnant women. I opened WeChat and looked through our chat records and found that Oliver had started saying that he wanted to drink all kinds of nourishing soups 3 months ago. At this moment, I was a bit slow to understand. He must have decided to be the stepfather for someone else at that time. Half an hour later, I carried the chicken soup and went to the living room of his manor. His colleagues who came on the team-building trip with him were sitting there. When they saw me, the originally lively atmosphere suddenly became quiet. They had always regarded me, his secretary, as Oliver's love beggar. Now they all looked at me with a sneering expression, waiting to see me make a fool of myself. In the main seat, Oliver doted on Vivian and half-hugged her in his arms. He unfairly took the chicken soup and said, "You're just in time." He raised his chin and pointed at several glasses of strong liquor on the table. Vivian can't drink it. Since you have a good capacity for alcohol, drink it for her. Oliver didn't even give me a glance, as if he was talking about something irrelevant. But he forgot that I was allergic to alcohol and only remembered that Vivian couldn't drink. It seemed that in his eyes, I was just a tool to drink on behalf of others. In an instant, I suddenly wanted an explanation for my 6 years with him. I couldn't help but speak up. Oliver, don't you think you should explain what happened with the proposal today? As soon as the words came out, the expressions of everyone present were a bit subtle. Anyone could see Oliver's preference for Vivian. Sure enough, Oliver was attentively feeding her chicken soup and said in a deep voice, "Evelyn, let's talk about this later. Don't spoil the mood." At this moment, the last glimmer of hope I had for him completely vanished. I had been his secretary for 6 years and helped him deal with countless scandals. But this time, I suddenly felt extremely tired. I swallowed the bitterness in my heart, picked up the wine glass and drank it all in one gulp. I wish Mr. Oliver and Miss Vivian a long life together and an early birth of a precious child. I thought I would make a scene, but they didn't expect me to be so calm. After all, in the past, whenever I faced Vivian, I was like a lit firecracker. Oliver seemed to be used to it too, coldly watching me go hysterical. Then he would casually give me a gift, and I would forgive him like a fool. I couldn't remember how many times I had argued with Oliver because of Vivian since she returned to the country. After each Cold War, I was the one who had to sort out my feelings alone and then go to him humbly to admit my mistake and show my weakness. In this relationship, I was already doomed to lose completely. When I walked out of the manor, Vivian's sweet voice came from behind. Oliver, Evelyn is angry. You should go and coax her quickly. But Oliver just sneered disapprovingly and gently rubbed her waist and abdomen. It's okay. She always obeys me. I'll just coax her a bit later. In the hospital, I endured the large patches of red rashes on my neck and worked hard. When I was about to finish the intravenous drip, I received a call from my brother as expected. The man on the other end of the phone chuckled and said, Evelyn, you lost. 6 years ago, I was in a car accident when I returned to the country to attend a friend's banquet. I was trapped in the car, and it was Oliver who risked his life to save me. Since then, I fell in love with him at first sight and was hopelessly in love with him. After graduation, despite my family's opposition, I resolutely decided to stay in the country. I was willing to work as a secretary in Oliver's company, taking care of him. My brother had always disliked him and didn't think highly of our relationship. But I was so infatuated with him that I couldn't listen to any advice. So I confidently made a bet with my brother. With a time limit of 7 years, Oliver wouldn't fall in love with someone else. If he lost, he would give me 10 of the equity as a dowry. If I lost, I would listen to him and go home obediently to go on a blind date. This time, Oliver's proposal became a trending topic, and it was hard for my brother not to know about it. My relationship with Oliver ended in the 6th year. I was willing to admit defeat. And then I paused for a moment and replied to him. Yes, after the trip in 3 days, I will fly back and go on a blind date. In the evening, when I dragged my tired body back to the hotel, I saw Oliver in my room. The company came to Colmar for a team-building trip. My colleagues and I lived in the hotel, while Oliver, who had a cleanliness obsession, lived alone in the manor under his name. When I heard a noise coming from the entrance, the man didn't even look up and asked coldly, Where have you been? Taking off my shoes, I casually perfunctorily replied, Nowhere. I didn't go into details. And Oliver didn't care either. He casually handed me a pink gift box. Vivian specially picked this gift for you. See how sensible she is. Regarding the trending topic, you should arrange someone to deal with it as soon as possible. Don't let it affect her reputation. She can't be stimulated now. I opened the gift box and took a look. It was a green preserved flower. If I remembered correctly, yesterday, Oliver gave her 99 preserved flowers of different colors. Vivian even complained in her moments that the green one was the ugliest. As a result, today, Oliver turned around and gave it to me. I indifferently responded with an emphatic aside without saying anything more. Oliver noticed that I was in a bad mood and rarely explained. Are you angry? I really have nothing with Vivian. As he walked closer, the smell of alcohol on him rushed towards me, mixed with the scent of the jasmine perfume that Vivian loved the most. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the red mark on his collar under his messy clothes. I pushed him away without showing it and pretended to go and get some water. I answered first, I know. There's nothing between you and her. After a pause, I added, I'm not angry. Because I already knew his answer by heart. Every time he left me for Vivian, he would explain like this. She's just a friend of mine. If something was going to happen, it would have happened already. But now, after hearing my words, for some reason, Oliver got angry again. There was a hint of impatience between his brows. His tone was cold. Then what's your attitude now? You know there's nothing between us, but you're still giving me a cold shoulder? I was a bit helpless. He thought I was giving him a cold shoulder just because I didn't agree with him. I took a deep breath and was about to speak. The exclusive ringtone for Vivian rang on his phone. Oliver gave me a cold look, turned his back and answered the phone tenderly. Oliver, I suddenly feel a bit uncomfortable in my stomach. Can you come and see me and accompany me to the hospital? Okay, you just wait for me obediently. I'll be there right away. As he spoke, Oliver's steps had already reached the entrance. When he was about to open the door, he surprisingly stopped and glanced at me. There's a problem with the cooperation. I have to rush to deal with it now. You go to bed first tonight. There's no need to wait for me. Before I could answer, he grabbed his coat and left in a hurry. I sent the written resignation letter to the HR's email box. I told her to remember to check it after the team building trip ended and we returned to the country in 3 days. Soon, I suddenly received a message from Vivian. It was a photo of Oliver's back as he was busy cooking porridge in the kitchen. The baby is making a lot of noise, but it quieted down as soon as Daddy came. Do you think this is the so-called blood tie? I ignored Vivian's provocation and blocked her directly. I smiled self-deprecating lie, then began to pack my luggage. Early the next morning, everyone's schedule was for free activities. I planned to stroll around this town that I had always dreamed of visiting. Walking on the road that was like a fairy tale town. Looking at the flowers all around, I just thought it was nothing special. I smiled bitterly. And there was a bit of relief in my heart. I didn't understand why I used to be so persistent about coming here. After finishing my stroll, I bought a large bouquet of flowers. Just as I was about to go back to the hotel, the sound of someone playing the piano and singing came from the Chinese restaurant ahead. It was the English song. I think I've seen this film before. I lifted my foot and wanted to keep walking, but the next moment, I was rooted to the spot. I recognized that magnetic and deep voice. It was Oliver. When he sang to the end, his tone ended with a bit of laziness. Live in a happy town with the one you love. Oliver always used to wear suits and rarely wore casual clothes. But today he was dressed as youthful as a college student. His eyes were full of affection as he looked at his first love whom he had fallen in love with when he was 18. My fingernails dug deeply into the palm of my hand. I stared at Oliver without blinking, remembering that he hated singing English songs. Once, I went to a friend's birthday party with him. In the KTV, I took the initiative to invite him to sing a song together. But he got angry on the spot. He directly threw the microphone away and snapped at me, "Can you stop being so childish? I hate singing the most." But now he was passionately singing for Vivian in full view of everyone. The atmosphere at the scene reached a climax, and enthusiastic applause rang out around. I clapped my hands along with them and watched them kiss like a couple deeply in love. I couldn't help but have red eyes and walked towards the crowd with a forced smile on my face. When he saw me appear, Oliver's expression changed instantly and he said, "Evelyn, are you annoying? You follow me wherever I go." He thought I was stalking him and didn't hide his disgust for me at all. I smiled and said, "Didn't you say there was a problem with the company's cooperation?" I pointed at the remaining lipstick on his lips. "What? Is the cooperation that Oliver mentioned about kissing someone else?" Hearing my sarcastic tone, Oliver furrowed his brows. "Evelyn, can you stop being unreasonable? Vivian is in a bad mood and wants to listen to music. Don't make a big deal out of it." Behind him, Vivian stuck out her tongue and let out a soft hum. "Sorry, Sister Evelyn. Don't blame Oliver. I just used a kiss as a reward for his wonderful singing." After saying that, Oliver doted on her and gently stroked her head. Then he turned to look at me and softened his tone, saying, "I was going to look for you, but I didn't expect you to come. There's a fireworks show tonight. I'll take you to see it later." There seemed to be a bit of love in his deep black eyes. Just like before, he said he would take me to any place I wanted to go. I thought about it and decided to fulfill my former wish. The square in the town was full of people waiting to watch the fireworks. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the fireworks burst and filled the entire sky. In the happy atmosphere, many couples were kissing and cheering. I turned my head, but I didn't see Oliver and Vivian. Suddenly, I didn't know what happened in the crowd. The noisy square suddenly became inexplicably chaotic. Everyone was so scared that they fled in a hurry. I reacted and just wanted to walk towards a safe place when a figure beside me suddenly crashed into me. In the chaos, I was whipped on the face by someone's bag chain. It hurt so much that I almost couldn't stand still and stumbled backwards. But I heard that familiar anxious voice in my ear. "Vivian, Don't be afraid. I'll take you back now. Oliver didn't stop walking and protected the frightened Vivian as they left. Looking at his back as he carried her away, I clearly realized that the Oliver who said he would always protect me had already changed. Fortunately, a few minutes later, the square returned to order. I was helped up by someone. After thanking them, I covered my bleeding forehead and rushed to the hospital. When I was about to swipe the card to pay for the medicine, I found that the card had been suspended by Oliver at some point, and my phone also ran out of power. In a foreign country, I held back the soreness in my nose. I started borrowing money everywhere. Finally, with the help of a young lady, I successfully bought the medicine. Just as I was about to do a simple dressing, my phone, which had been charged, immediately received a call from Oliver. "Evelyn, where are you? Why haven't you been answering the phone? Where did you run to when something happened in the square just now? Are you okay?" I couldn't tell if the concern in his tone on the other end of the phone was genuine or not. I replied briefly, "I'm fine. My phone just got charged." Hearing that I was okay, the person on the phone obviously heaved a sigh of relief. Then his tone turned impatient again. "Then hurry up and come to the airport. Vivian is not feeling well and wants to go back to the country." Before I could speak, Vivian's voice, as if about to cry, came through. "Oliver, my stomach really hurts. Is there anything wrong with the baby?" "It's okay. I can wait for Sister Evelyn for as long as it takes." Vivian was so sensible that Oliver had completely lost his patience. He shouted at me on the phone, "I give you half an hour to hurry up and arrange to get to the airport." The phone was suddenly hung up, and the beeping sound of the disconnection came. I changed the ticket for my trip and dragged my luggage. When I took a taxi and arrived at the airport, it was already an hour later. As Oliver's secretary, I efficiently helped him complete the check-in procedures. When I handed the boarding passes to the two of them, Vivian suddenly covered her stomach and pretended to be scared. Sister Evelyn, why do you have blood all over your face?" After I finished dressing the wound, I hadn't had time to wash my face and change my clothes. Oliver looked at me, and a hint of disgust flashed across his face. "Evelyn, are you crazy? Why are you deliberately scaring Vivian?" The wound aching, and I was so tired that I didn't even have the strength to speak. I walked straight to the restroom, planning to change into a new set of clothes. But Vivian suddenly appeared. She cast a provocative look at me. "Evelyn, you're such a beggar. Your skin is really thick. You know that Oliver proposed to me, but you still keep pestering him." Hearing the strong hostility in her words, I looked up at her. I was just about to retort when I saw the bag in her hand. I recognized it as the bag that deliberately hit me in the square. I suddenly grabbed her wrist and questioned her. "Is this your bag? Why did you deliberately hit me with it just now?" Vivian avoided my gaze and didn't answer me. After struggling to shake off my hand, she fell to the ground on purpose. The next second, Oliver outside the door rushed in when he heard the sound. Vivian immediately covered her stomach and cried out in pain. He quickly helped her up and glared at me angrily. "Evelyn, how could you become so vicious? If anything happens to Vivian, I'll make you pay." He didn't listen to my explanation at all and carried her away. I walked out of the restroom and went back to the waiting area. The little assistant ran over, looking extremely troubled, and told me that the colleagues in the company would take the same flight back to the country later. But Oliver specifically had someone cancel my plane ticket. I knew this was his way of warning me. If I didn't listen to him, he would leave me here penniless. In the past, I would definitely have been the first to admit my mistake and show my weakness. But now, I just stared coldly at Oliver not far away. It was not until the boarding announcement came that I walked towards him. "Evelyn, you stay here and reflect on yourself properly. Even if you beg me, it's no use." Vivian is still angry. But what Oliver waited for was not my admission of mistake. I interrupted him and said coldly, "Let's break up." After saying that, I withdrew my gaze and didn't want to look at him anymore. Behind me, Oliver was stunned for a moment. Then, out of extreme anger, he sneered. Evelyn, you'd better do what you say. Don't come crawling back to me in the future. After saying that, he turned around and left, boarding the plane back to the country. I blocked and deleted all of his contact information. I went in the opposite direction to him and boarded a plane to another country. But I didn't expect that right after I took my seat, I met someone I didn't expect. It was Ethan, the billionaire whom Vivian loved but couldn't have. That day he rejected Vivian's confession of love under the sunset in Colmar. That's why Oliver later proposed to his first love. Ethan, who was sitting next to me, met my confused gaze. He spoke first. Briefly, hello, my name is Ethan. Your brother Julian wanted to introduce me to you as a blind date partner. After he finished speaking, I secretly thought in my heart that the world was really small. But I still maintained a smile on my face, shook his hand, and replied, hello, I'm Evelyn. After chatting and getting to know each other better, I learned that Ethan was also going on a trip for a few days. I didn't expose him and just took this opportunity to get to know each other. On Oliver's side, after he returned to the country and took Vivian to the hospital, he was dragged by a group of his friends to a bar to celebrate our breakup. Oliver, congratulations. You've finally gotten rid of that love beggar. Come on, let's all toast to your newfound freedom. But Oliver was gripping his phone tightly and looked restless. By then, 3 hours had passed since he and I broke up. But I didn't send him a single message, nor did I try to win him back. This wasn't like my usual style, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. His friend beside him noticed his restlessness and comforted him, saying, Oliver, this must be her trick. She's playing hard to get. The others chimed in, saying that I had done this before. Yes, it must be that Evelyn is playing the game of hard to get. Thinking of this, the panic in Oliver's eyes turned back into the familiar look of disgust. Then he opened WeChat and quickly typed out a message and sent it to me. Evelyn, do you know what you did wrong? Admit your mistake and I'll let you come back. But the message failed to send, and it showed that the other party was not a friend. At this moment, the HR manager of the company also called him. Oliver, do you know that Secretary Evelyn has resigned? Before he could finish listening, Oliver couldn't sit still any longer. He directly hung up the phone and dialed my mobile number. After several attempts, all he heard on the other end of the phone was the mechanical voice saying that the phone was turned off. The man suddenly threw his phone against the floor-to-ceiling glass window. A moment later, he grabbed his friend's phone and called his assistant. Contact the people at the airport. I don't care what method you use. Even if you have to turn the airport upside down, you must find Evelyn and bring her back to me. At this time I, who was on vacation by the seaside, knew nothing about all these things. But unexpectedly, on the second day of the trip, I fell ill. After being exposed to the sea breeze and suffering from a recurring high fever caused by the wound on my forehead, Ethan took care of me without taking off his clothes for 2 days before I got better. After that day, through our interaction, our relationship developed rapidly. On the day the trip ended, we got together and then got married smoothly. In the first year of our marriage, Ethan accompanied me on a round-the-world honeymoon trip. Until Ethan's grandfather celebrated his birthday, we decided to go back to the country to offer our congratulations. But I didn't expect that I would meet Oliver at Ethan's family banquet. He was wearing a proper suit, but he had lost a lot of weight. When our eyes met, his eyes instantly turned red. He stepped forward and grabbed me. His eyes seemed to want to crush me into his arms. Evelyn. Evelyn. You're finally back. I averted my gaze, held my evening dress, and directly shook off his hand. I said inferently, Mr. Oliver, please behave yourself. Don't call me like that. If my husband hears it, he'll be jealous. Oliver was shocked. His eyes filled with tears stared at me. What husband? Evelyn, you're married? I raised my hand and waved the huge diamond wedding ring on my finger and nodded. Oliver looked in disbelief and murmured, This can't be. You love me so much. How could you marry another man? At this moment, a big hand suddenly wrapped around my waist and pulled me closer. Oliver, how dare you try to steal my wife right in front of everyone? Oliver's family was also a wealthy family, but it couldn't compare with Ethan's family. Oliver naturally recognized Ethan, the man whom his first love had loved for 10 years. Seeing him standing closely beside me, he still couldn't believe it. I calmly said, "Mr. Oliver, let me introduce you. This is my husband, Ethan. You should be familiar with him." "I know. You must be angry with me because I proposed to Vivian back then." Oliver thought he had guessed my thoughts correctly and was convinced of it. "Evelyn, that's enough. You even found someone to act to provoke me." I was a bit speechless at his train of thought and didn't even bother to prove myself. After all, whether he believed it or not had little to do with us. At this time, the old man's birthday banquet began, and everyone stepped forward to offer their congratulations. "Now, let's invite our Ethan and the president's wife." As soon as the MC's voice fell, everyone was eagerly waiting. They all wanted to know who the other half of the billionaire was. Until Ethan, holding my hand, appeared in the public eye. Below the stage, the people in Oliver and Vivian's circle were all shocked. And Vivian tightly grasped Oliver's hand, her face full of resentment. But at this moment, Oliver's attention wasn't on Vivian, because he still couldn't believe that I had married Ethan. After accompanying Ethan to meet the elders, I was just about to go to the rest area. Vivian suddenly ran over like a madwoman, regardless of her image, and questioned me. "Evelyn, why? Didn't you love Oliver the most? How could you marry Ethan? Did you do it on purpose? Since Oliver's heart is on me, you stole my Ethan?" I held a wine glass and glanced at the woman in front of me. "Your Ethan?" Vivian was now like a woman and driven crazy by jealousy and started to act recklessly. "Of course he's mine. You know I've loved him for 10 years, 10 years. What right do you have to marry him? You're just a second-hand woman. What's so special about you that I don't have? I'm not willing to accept this." Slap. I directly slapped her in the face. Then I grabbed her hair and forced her to raise her head and listen to me. "You're a despicable person. What right do you have to talk about love here? Vivian, don't think that no one knows what you've done. What do you think would happen if everyone knew your true face?" After hearing my threatening words, Vivian sat on the ground motionless. Over there, Ethan, who rushed over when he heard the commotion, confirmed that I was okay. He directly asked the bodyguards to drive her away, terminate the cooperation with Vivian's family, and no one from Vivian's family is allowed to appear. Just as Oliver was about to step forward, I didn't hold back and slapped him. In the end, both of them were kicked out of the banquet of Ethan group. At this moment, everyone present finally realized one thing. I was no longer the one who used to fawn over Oliver. After the banquet, we planned to stay in the old house to keep the old man company. When Ethan was seeing off the guests in the front hall, I was stopped by Oliver in the backyard. "Evelyn, stop making trouble, okay? Do you have any difficulties? If you're being threatened by Ethan, tell me and I'll help you." I was not strong enough to break free and was pulled a few steps by Oliver. I couldn't walk steadily in high heels, and I sprained my ankle. I bent over in pain. When I looked up, I saw Ethan's fist had already landed on Oliver's face. The man took my hand and looked coldly at Oliver, who was lying on the ground. "Oliver, I remember I gave you some leeway just now." Oliver wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, stood up leaning against the wall and said viciously, "Ethan, this is between me and Evelyn. Don't fucking interfere, don't call me Evelyn. We broke up a long time ago, Oliver. I married Ethan because I like him. Don't flatter yourself." As soon as the words fell, Oliver froze in place. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Evelyn, we had a relationship of 6 years. I don't believe that in just 1 year, you've fallen in love with another man. It's just 6 years. I don't love you anymore and have let go of you. Aren't you the same? You've even been in love with someone else all along." The man was choked by my words and couldn't say anything for a long time. When he saw that I was about to leave, he quickly grabbed me and said humbly, "It's not like what you think, Evelyn. I haven't fallen in love with someone else. I'll break up with Vivian immediately, and never have any contact with her again. I promise you, we can start over when we go back." Oliver kept repeating, "I swear, Evelyn, please give me another chance, okay? As long as you come back with me, we can even have a wedding tomorrow. I don't mind that you've been married once. I really love you." I shook off the man's touch fiercely and said infuriately, "I do mind, Oliver. I think you're disgusting. I'm very glad that I didn't marry you. How could I ever go back?" My words were like a bolt from the blue. Oliver was stunned in place, looking at me in disbelief. "You're lying to me, weren't you the one who most wanted to marry me? Evelyn, stop making trouble, okay? Please don't make trouble with me anymore." "Oliver, are you deaf? I said I don't love you anymore." Even though I said such heartless words, Oliver didn't listen at all. He was pinned to the ground with his hands restrained and couldn't move. Still, he stubbornly raised his head to look at me and cried and begged bitterly, "It's okay, Evelyn. It doesn't matter if you don't love me. As long as I love you. I want to marry you. I want to marry you, okay?" The person who used to be noble and proud and had never bowed his head to admit his mistakes seemed to no longer care about his dignity at this moment and was extremely humble. But I just felt extremely annoyed and even disgusted. My ears hurt from his noise. So I took Ethan's arm and left. But unexpectedly, when I went to a gathering with my former colleagues from the company, Oliver somehow found out and showed up to block me again. "Evelyn, I have something to say. Can we have a serious talk?" After we arrived at the coffee shop, Oliver took out a ring box. "Evelyn, do you remember? This is the one we designed together. At that time, I really planned to marry you as soon as I got back to the country. Vivian's confession was rejected then, and I just proposed to her to appease her. I've never been together with her. Please believe me, okay?" I looked at the wedding ring in front of me, which used to be my favorite style. But at this moment, I thought it was very ugly and cheap and couldn't like it anymore. "I don't remember." "So what? What exactly do you want to say?" Seeing that I was unmoved and indifferent, Oliver's patience was almost exhausted, and he said through gritted teeth, "Evelyn, I've admitted my mistake. Why won't you forgive me?" At this moment, Oliver seemed to finally stop hiding his true nature. Looking at the man I had liked for 6 years, I just felt strange. It seemed that I had already forgotten why I liked him in the first place. I didn't want to waste more words with him. When I was about to get up and leave, Oliver suddenly said to me, "Evelyn, you've been deceived. Don't you know yet? Ethan has a bastard child, and Vivian gave birth to it for him. The child in Vivian's belly back then was his." After he finished speaking, I wasn't shocked at all. I looked at him with a half smile and directly threw the information that Ethan had found for me in my bag onto his face, exposing him. "It's you who's been deceived, Oliver. You and Vivian weren't together because you're both despicable. Vivian keeps a backup guy, and you're so eager to be a father for someone else. As for the bastard child, I'm afraid Vivian doesn't even know whose child it is either. Those materials were all about Vivian's private life information. She not only had ambiguous relationships with several wealthy young men. The so-called loving Ethan for 10 years was also part of her persona, including that so-called bastard child. In fact, it was all rumors spread by Vivian after she failed to win Ethan's love. Vivian didn't know who the father of the child in her belly was and was looking for a scapegoat. And among her backup guys, Oliver was the most loyal. Only Oliver, the unlucky guy, had always believed in his first love. I thought that Vivian's family wouldn't bring this up again, and Ethan wouldn't pursue it either. But I didn't expect that they would still bring it up now. Don't blame me for being rude. You can take a good look at your rotten first love." After saying that, I directly pushed the door and left the coffee shop. I was already in a bad mood, and I didn't expect that Vivian had been waiting at the door. When she saw me come out, she rushed in anxiously and asked Oliver, "Oliver, how is it? You succeeded in proposing, right? As long as she divorces Ethan, I'll have a chance. When I heard Vivian's words, I was instantly furious. Vivian, I knew you were despicable. But I didn't expect you to be this despicable. You like stealing other people's boyfriends and husbands so much, don't you? When Vivian heard me say this, her face turned pale instantly. At this time, Oliver still hadn't reacted from the news. He still instinctively spoke up to defend Vivian. Evelyn, how can you say that about Vivian? I sneered and retorted. I'm already being very kind by not cursing her entire family. Oliver, you're really infatuated. You're still defending her. Vivian also saw the materials in Oliver's hand at this time. Her face turned pale immediately. And she immediately hid in Oliver's arms. Oliver, we have a relationship of 10 years. Don't be provoked by her. All those things are fake. Sure enough, as soon as she said that, the suspicious look on Oliver's face disappeared immediately. He turned to question me. Evelyn, are you being deceived by Ethan? These materials are very likely to be deliberately used by him to deceive you. I sneered. Fortunately, Ethan had already predicted that he wouldn't believe it. I took out another thing he had prepared for me, which was a voice recorder. I pressed the play button, and Vivian's contemptuous voice came out. There's no other way. Oliver is willing to be my backup guy. He believes whatever I say. He's so easy to deceive, and he believes whoever I say the child in my belly belongs to. After playing it, I observed Oliver's reaction. I saw his face getting darker and darker, and he was so angry that the veins on his face stood out. Without asking, by looking at Vivian's evasive eyes, Oliver could already tell that all the materials in the recording were true. I didn't forget to add fuel to the fire. You two are a perfect match. You're both disgusting. Ignoring the sounds of the two of them scolding each other behind me, I went home feeling relieved. After that day, I thought I had made myself clear enough. Until the evening, Oliver's friends called me one after another. Sister Evelyn. Oliver is drunk and won't listen to anyone's advice. He keeps calling your name. Can you come and persuade him? Those people who used to only mock me as a love beggar whenever they saw me now had a complete change of attitude since they needed my help. After a moment of silence, I refused inferently. If he's drunk, send him to the hospital. What's the use of coming to me? After hanging up the phone, I thought they would be sensible. But unexpectedly, they called me again from a different number. I couldn't stand it anymore and roared, "Are you done with this? Evelyn, my head hurts so much. I want to drink the honey water you made." Unexpectedly, it was Oliver's voice on the other end of the phone. Before I could say anything, the phone was suddenly snatched away. Oliver, please stop calling to harass my wife. If you have too much free time, I don't mind finding something for you to do. After saying that, Ethan hung up the phone. Domineering lie. What's wrong? Are you sad? Do you still want to rekindle the old relationship? Seeing that I didn't speak, Ethan's tone was full of jealousy. I looked at this petty man in front of me and smiled. Ethan said that he had fallen in love with me since my college days. But at that time, I only had Oliver in my eyes and heart. So he had to put all his energy into his work. Over the years, Ethan had been silently paying attention to my love life. After learning that Oliver had proposed to Vivian, he received a call from my brother. He learned the news that I was going back to have a blind date with him. He immediately flew to the town of Colmar and waited for me at the airport. He just wanted to take the opportunity to go on a trip with me and get closer to my heart. Thinking of this, I hugged him tightly with both hands and leaned against his chest. How could I be sad? I can't wait to stay away from him. Ethan lowered his head and kissed my forehead, his voice a bit sullen. Then you can't see Oliver again in the future. I'm jealous. I stood on tiptoe and kissed his lips, and said sincerely, I was blind before, but now my eyes are cured. In this life, I will never let go of your hand. Ethan did what he said. Several major projects of Oliver's family were lost. Oliver Group was in a state of chaos. Not only was the stock price affected, but there were also problems with the capital chain. I heard that Oliver was removed from his position as president and kicked out of the company. And Vivian was suddenly exposed as a mistress somehow. She was caught in the act by the original partner's girlfriend, and was beaten up on the spot. Vivian no longer had the innocent image of the first love she used to have. She frantically clarified and explained, but no one believed her. However, a few days later, the families of Oliver and Vivian actually issued an official statement on their Weibo accounts. They announced that Oliver and Vivian were going to get married in a week. No one knew why the two of them agreed. But as soon as this news came out, Oliver Group received investments. Vivian's family also whitewashed Vivian and proved that the accusation of her being a mistress was unfounded. She and Oliver had been childhood sweethearts, and their relationship was stable. And the proposal video from that time was released again. For a while, everyone started praising their love again. The day I flew back abroad with Ethan was also the day of their wedding. While waiting for the flight at the airport, Oliver actually appeared after running away from the wedding. "Evelyn, don't leave. I'm forced to marry Vivian. My parents arranged this marriage alliance with Vivian's family to save Oliver Group. In my heart, Oliver, there has always been only you." I looked down at the man in front of me who was crying bitterly. I couldn't help feeling disgusted. After a long time, I said coldly, "Oliver, it has nothing to do with me who you marry. Marriage is not a tool for you to morally kidnap me. You're treating it like a joke, and the only one you're sorry for is yourself." As soon as I finished speaking, Vivian, wearing a wedding dress, rushed over with a group of people in a hurry. Without asking any questions, she started cursing at me. "Evelyn, you fox. It's not enough for you to steal Ethan, and you still won't let Oliver go." The next second, Oliver, who had been wailing just now, slapped her. "Vivian, shut up. Don't talk about Evelyn like that." Vivian covered her face with smudged makeup and cursed back viciously. "Oliver, stop pretending to be affectionate here." The voices of the two of them accusing each other grew louder and louder. More and more people were watching and started talking about it. Realizing the pointing and whispering of the people around them, the two of them fled in a hurry under the protection of Oliver's family bodyguards. I also quickly pulled Ethan and boarded the plane to leave. That afternoon, the incident of someone being injured at the president's wedding of Oliver Group became a trending topic. I heard that after they went back, when the wedding was halfway through, suddenly, photos of Vivian fooling around with others in a wedding dress appeared on the screen. Oliver lost his mind out of anger on the spot and seriously injured Vivian. After Vivian had a miscarriage due to excessive blood loss, she could no longer have children. After being discharged from the hospital, the two of them had a dispute and both had a car accident and became paralyzed. Later, Vivian's family directly announced that they would sever the marriage alliance relationship with Oliver's family. The stock price of Oliver Group plummeted to the bottom, and there was no chance of recovery ever since. When I heard these news, Ethan and I were immersed in joy. We were discussing what would be a nice name for our child after it was born.